Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a technique tutorial video, but it's mainly just talking about the techniques that I use, especially when I'm going to draw skin for a portrait, and I create a nose at the end so that you can kind of see how I draw noses. I think this will be a new series that I'm doing, specifically focusing on different parts of the face and how I build up layers with graphite to create something that looks fairly realistic. I hope you enjoy the video, and thanks for watching. Alright, so this is specifically a tutorial talking about the very basics of drawing a nose/skin texture. It may be a little too basic for some of you. To start off, I'm going to show you how I blend dark to light pencils. Then talk about some erasing and pour/texture techniques that I use. Then, towards the end, I'll walk you through drawing a very simple nose. Also, just for a little fun, there will be a giveaway associated with this video now that I've hit 100 subscribers here on YouTube. To enter, stay tuned until somewhere close to the end to find out more details. So, starting off, I've already kind of laid out my paper for this tutorial. 2 long boxes and 3 smaller ones, and I've already lightly outlined the nose I'll be drawing. If you'd like to follow along, you definitely can. I recommend having a 4H to 6B set of graphite pencils, a Tombow Mono Zero eraser, a decent sketchbook or paper, and a gray kneaded eraser. All of the links to the ones I use are in the description below. So, getting started, I'm going to lay down my lightest pencil, which is a 4H, and I'm basically going to lay down 4H to 6B so that you can see the variation of these pencil weights. Again, this may be very beginner for some of you, but if not, and if you are a beginner, this might be a great place to start. Something just to note here, I always hold my pencil in the middle at an angle towards the paper, never straight down, mainly because I want it to be light and not scar the paper with an indent. If I'm wanting a crisp, dark, then I will hold the pencil towards the tip and press down much harder. With this one, you'll notice I'm not trying to blend in between the layers, so you can obviously see the difference in between each of these. If you're a beginner, it's good to do this so you can understand what soft versus hard pencils are and when is best to use them. I'm also just going straight up and down with this one, so the lines are very, very obvious. Alright, so I'm quickly going to repeat what I just did on the first bar, but there will be an extra few steps on this one to show you how I blend my drawings. Now I'm going to go in with my round fluffy brush and start blending the layers together. I normally go light to dark first and then back from dark to light. And really just kind of go back and forth, quick small circles, or just running it through all of them, several different directions to really try to get these layers to blend together just using my brush. Now, just to talk about the brush real quick, this is just a round, fluffy watercolor brush. I got it from Michael's. I think it was probably $2. So you don't need something expensive, just something soft to work. And it's already looking more blended than the first one we did, but it's not blended quite enough. So now I'm going to go back in with my pencils at a different angle than the first one. You can see that it's a different direction, And I also make sure to overlap my different pencil weights so that the border really starts to fade. And just going to take this time real quick to mention that I use a brush instead of tissue, fingers, or a blending stub because I find those all to be too harsh. I prefer a brush because I can wipe it off easier, it's reusable forever, and I can be as gentle or as harsh as I want to be. Now I'm going back in with yet another layer, and I think the importance here is that you start from light on the first layer and you build it up. So sometimes my drawings have 20 or more layers. It's hard to count, but I don't ever want to start with a dark or heavy weighted pencil because it's hard to erase if I mess up. And this is especially key when you're doing a portrait and you really want to make sure you're getting your proportions correct. Now I'm going back in with my brush real quick, and it's looking pretty good. I could keep working on this, but I think you guys get the idea. The more you blend, the more you build up, the better your drawing will look. However, too blended is not what skin texture is. Skin has pores, divots, creases, highlights, and lowlights. It's not perfect. Even models who have seemingly perfect skin actually don't. So the next step is moving on and talking about how I start to build up skin texture. I'm going to show 3 different techniques that I'll use for the nose at the end. Sorry that the video jumped a little bit here, but essentially I lightly filled in my first box. This is very light and I used my brush to blend it in. The first step is adding light texture so that you'll see I'm making little dots on the paper. These are quick little movements, not perfect, but generally where I'm seeing some depth and darkness in the skin. And then brush over it to soften my pores, and we'll go back in with slightly darker or heavier pencil in some areas to make some more definition. Again, you can kind of start seeing the buildup of texture here, and honestly, some of this helps hide any imperfections with our base layer. So you can see if we did this over and over again, it would really start building up depth, and especially when we go in and add our next techniques that we're going to learn. Alright, so next up, I'm going to quickly shade in this box with the steps we've already learned, lightly layering my pencil, again at a strong angle towards the paper, and going in different directions to help hide the texture and make it more blended. Using our favorite little brush to go in and really blend it out. I'm also going to build up some darker areas real quick with this one so that my tool shows up a little bit better. This step shows a tool that every graphite artist should have. It's a kneaded eraser, and for this step I make it into a fine point. I then go through and lightly dab where I want to see pores catching light and the light catching on the skin. I work the eraser several times, making new points because this eraser absorbs graphite, and I want it to continue picking up the graphite on the paper. I do go through and I blend it to soften the whites with our brush, and go in again to pick out some very specific white areas that I want to pop. This is a really easy way to add texture, and sometimes I'll blend it almost to where I can't see the eraser markings I just made, and it's mainly to just break up the base texture that we created. So onto our third and final box. This method is my absolute favorite, and I get asked about it a lot because it's a way to add bright whites to a drawing. Again, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because I think we already know how to build up layers at this point and blend them together. The tool that I'm using now is a Tombow Mono Zero Eraser. This is definitely one of my favorite tools, and I always recommend this to beginner artists or people wanting to know how to up their portrait game just a little bit more. And for this one, I'm slowly making oval shapes, as you can see. I do have to press pretty hard with this one, but that also helps make sure it's crisp and much more crisp than the kneaded eraser. This is also the tool that I go in and I add hair with. So the whites and bright whites on hair, I always go back in and really make them super crisp with this. I never draw the white hairs beforehand. I always do this, and I do several layers. As you can see, it's a really nice crisp white. But I do recommend going in on the edge and really sharpening it up with a hard pencil. So I'm going to quickly clean up my paper with my kneaded eraser. Again, this is perfect if you want to keep the area around your portrait white. Kneaded erasers will never put graphite on a paper, as long as you keep kneading them. And I never recommend using a different eraser on white backgrounds because they can embed graphite into the paper, and honestly, once it's embedded, it's never going to come back out. Alright, so now moving on, let's start working on our nose. Again, key here is buildup of layers, and very, very light layers is super important. So I'm using my lightest pencil, which is a 4H. I'm going in many different directions, and it's so light you can't really even notice a difference. This is okay, because I'm mainly trying to define areas that need to be darker in the future, and areas that need to be lighter. I also go through and start dashing at this point because I want to start building up layers of texture. It's never too early to start adding different types of texture. And there's honestly no key formula here. You can dash, brush, erase, make any lines you want to at any time, but the key is doing it over and over again in specific areas until you enjoy the way it looks. I like to typically lay down my pencil layers first, then brush, and then final would be erasing. And sometimes I repeat this once, I'll repeat it 20 times until I'm happy. It just depends on how intense the portrait is that I'm working on. So I am quickly just going to outline the nose. This is a 2H, so still very light, but I don't want to lose the shape of the nose while I'm working on it. The outline only occurs in the darkest of spots, same as where I'm slowly starting to build up some of the darkness. These are tiny, quick movements, as you can see, similar to the pore shapes, but not quite. So this is definitely feeling really light, which is totally fine and where we want to be. But I'm going to start going in with more force. You can see my fingers are now closer to the end of the pencil because I'm pressing harder. I'm still holding the pencil at an angle though because I don't want to scar the paper. This is important. A good time to note that the harder the pencils are, the more likely they are to indent the paper or even tear it if you're pressing too hard. Now I'm going in with a slightly softer pencil to start building up depth. I still haven't brought out my brush, but again, you can at any time you want to. With this layer, I'm going to start to avoid areas that I want to be light, like the edge of his nose where I see light shining on it. And also, spoiler, it's a he, and an important detail to note for the giveaway I'm going to announce later in this video. Also, I'm piling up my pencils to the left so you can see how many I use, but I recommend you putting them off to the side of your paper. I've sometimes had bad problems where I see a pencil will mark or scar the paper where I don't want it to. Switching over to a darker pencil now, you can start seeing the darks of this drawing finally showing up. And I'm just going to keep making those darks darker. This is all, again, just a buildup of layers so that I can use my brush to blend them all together at the end. So going back in real quick with some lighter pencils, even in the white areas. I want to make my whites using my erasers as I showed you earlier. So I lightly cover the entire drawing with a 4H and sometimes up to a 2H in areas. This will make sure our erasers are crisp and actually showing up where we want them to. Besides, no one is actually white like paper all over, even the guy I'm drawing, even though he's very pale. Hint, hint. Finally, I'm going in with my brush real quick so that I can start using my kneaded eraser. Again, kneaded erasers work best at a point with this step. And now I just go in and lightly dab where I want to start adding texture. This isn't only in the bright whites, I also go in the shadows where I've started to make some variation. It's tough to see here, but it really does start making the idea of pores come to life. And again, lightly brushing it to blend in the lighter areas I just created. So basically, I blend, knead, add pencil texture over and over again until I'm satisfied with the texture I'm getting. At this point with my pencil, I only make small ovals or dots to help create the pore texture. You'll see me almost dabbing the paper, and I keep this all very light again because I can always go back in with my darks where I need to. So now I'm going in using my dark darks, which I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see because I'm holding the pencil so close to the end. I'm pressing really hard for this, and it's also a 6B. These are only the blackest of blacks. I do go in lightly around the blacks to build up some of the darks. Really the only place on a nose where there should be a dark to immediate white contrast is the top of the nostril. Otherwise, everything should be softly fading from dark to light. Even on top of the nostril, sometimes people have indents that make it a little bit darker than the white that we normally see. So now that I have my dark darks and general texture built up, I can go back in with my white Tombow eraser. And guys, I didn't clean it off, so I left graphite on my paper. You can see the little dot, and now I have to try to hide it. Unfortunately, if you don't clean off your erasers, this is what happens, and this is why I don't recommend using anything but a kneaded eraser on your white backgrounds. Anyways, I still make a lot of mistakes even though I've been doing this for a while. Going in now with my very clean Tombow Mono Zero eraser, I'm going to start erasing the white of. This generally happens at the edge of the nose where light is hitting and reflecting off, and sometimes the upper lip. I also like using this eraser in the middle of noses where the pores are catching the light. It's really just great wherever you're seeing those very, very sharp whites in the image. Anyways, that was my final step. And as for the giveaway, don't worry, I didn't forget you guys. To win one of my art prints of your choice, 8x10 size, from my Etsy shop, which the link is always below in the description, you must be 1, a subscriber to my YouTube channel, and 2, you have to guess whose nose I drew in the comments down below. The first right answer will receive the giveaway. I will be announcing the winner at the beginning of my video on May 30th. If no one's guessed correctly by then, it will just be a random giveaway. Again, you must be a subscriber to me on here, and tell me who you think I drew the nose of in the comments below. Also, if you have any comments or questions on this video, then please let me know. I'm always here to help you, and I love giving advice on how to draw. Thanks guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up below so that others can enjoy watching it too. If you're new to my channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you would like to see more content in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.